The United States Navy operates the most terrifying, technologically advanced, and absurdly expensive fleet in human history. To put it in perspective, the U.S. Navy's fleet of aircraft carriers is so massive that it makes the U.S. Navy the second largest air force in the world, beaten only by the actual U.S. Air Force. At the center of this dominance is the Nimitz-class aircraft carrier. Take the USS Ronald Reagan, a $6.2 billion nuclear-powered floating city that carries twice as many fighter jets as any foreign carrier on Earth. It is surrounded by a carrier strike group, a massive armada of destroyers, cruisers, and nuclear submarines specifically designed to form an impenetrable shield around the carrier. To attack it is military suicide. To sink it is mathematically impossible. Or, at least it was. Until 2005. During a massive naval war game in the Pacific Ocean, the impenetrable USS Ronald Reagan was brutally, flawlessly sunk. The assassin wasn't a swarm of Russian nuclear subs or a barrage of hypersonic missiles. It was a single, tiny, diesel-powered submarine from Sweden. It cost exactly $100 million, the price of just one modern fighter jet. It slipped past the entire American Armada, entered the red zone, scored multiple simulated torpedo hits directly on the carrier's hull, and vanished back into the abyss completely undetected. How did a tiny Swedish submarine completely break the rules of modern naval warfare? They didn't invent a futuristic cloaking device. They used a mechanical system glitch, an engine design invented in 1816 to become the ultimate ghost of the ocean. To understand how the Swedes hacked the US Navy, you have to understand how submarines hunt. Underwater, you cannot use radar and you cannot see. The only way to find the enemy is through sonar, essentially playing high-stakes Marco Polo in the dark. There is active sonar, where a submarine sends out a loud sound pulse, a ping, and listens for the echo bouncing off an enemy hull. But in real warfare, using active sonar is a terrible idea. It's like turning on a flashlight in a dark room full of snipers. You might see them, but they instantly know exactly where you are. So modern navies rely on passive sonar. They don't emit any sound, they just listen. Modern electronic ears are terrifyingly precise. They are so sensitive that they can literally determine the nationality of a submarine just by listening to the hum of its electrical grid. A US submarine's alternating current operates at 60 Hz, while a European sub operates at 50 Hz. If a ship isn't perfectly insulated, the enemy can hear it from miles away. In this environment, making a single sound means death. And this is exactly where the world's most powerful submarines possess a fatal, billion-dollar blind spot. The US Navy uses exclusively nuclear-powered submarines. Nuclear power is incredible because it gives a submarine unlimited range. It never has to surface for air or fuel. But it has one glaring mechanical flaw. You cannot turn a nuclear reactor off. To prevent the reactor from melting down, massive pumps must constantly circulate liquid coolant. Pumping liquid makes noise. It creates a low, continuous mechanical hum that passive sonar can detect. On the other hand, standard diesel-electric submarines are incredibly quiet when running entirely on their batteries. But batteries die quickly. When they do, the sub has to surface, stick a snorkel out of the water, and fire up loud explosive diesel combustion engines to recharge. When they do that, they are sitting ducks. The Swedes looked at this problem and realized they needed a third option. They needed a submarine that didn't rely on noisy nuclear pumps, but also didn't need to surface to breathe. To achieve this, the Swedish Gotland-class submarine bypassed modern technology entirely and resurrected a 200-year-old cheat code, the Stirling engine. In 1816, a Scottish clergyman named Robert Stirling was horrified by the frequent, deadly boiler explosions of early steam engines. He wanted to invent a safer engine that didn't rely on dangerously high-pressure steam. Standard internal combustion engines like the one in your car generate power through tiny, violent internal explosions. Explosions are inherently loud. Robert Stirling designed a completely closed system. Inside a sealed cylinder, there is a fixed amount of gas. If you apply intense heat to the outside of one end of the cylinder, the gas inside expands, pushing a piston down. If you cool the other end of the cylinder, the gas contracts, pulling the piston back. By adding a displacer piston to push the gas back and forth between the hot side and the cold side, and a regenerator to act as a thermal battery, Stirling created an engine driven purely by a continuous temperature difference. There are no internal explosions. There are no valves slamming shut. The fuel is burned completely outside the engine chamber in a smooth, continuous, silent flame. The Swedish engineers took this 1816 parlor trick and turned it into a weapon of mass stealth. The Gotland submarine uses liquid oxygen and diesel fuel to burn a continuous, silent flame outside the Stirling engines. Because they brought their own liquid oxygen, they don't need to surface for air. The Stirling engines silently charge the submarine's electric batteries, which then drive the propeller. But what about the exhaust bubbles? A submarine blowing exhaust bubbles into the ocean creates noise that sonar can hear. The Swedes engineered a system to compress the exhaust gases and store them directly on board, or dissolve them so deeply into the seawater that they leave absolutely no trace. The result is a submarine that vibrates so little and makes so little noise that it is virtually invisible to the most advanced acoustic sensors on Earth. It can stay submerged for up to 2 weeks without ever coming up for air. When the Gotland entered the Pacific War Games in 2005, the U.S. Navy simply couldn't find it. It didn't matter that the USS Ronald Reagan was surrounded by a multi-billion-dollar shield of destroyers and acoustic arrays. The Gotland slipped right through the net. The Swedish crew easily maneuvered their $100 million submarine into the exact firing coordinates required to sink the $6.2 billion supercarrier. They snapped photos through their periscope to prove they had the kill shot, and then drifted away like a phantom. The US military was so deeply terrified by this undeniable system error that they didn't just redesign their tactics, they literally rented the submarine. The US Navy leased the Gotland and its Swedish crew for an entire year, bringing them to San Diego just so American anti-submarine commanders could practice trying to find it. Time and time again, the Gotland proved that an affordable 200-year-old engine design could completely humiliate the cutting edge of modern military science. The story of the Gotland is a stark warning about the hubris of modern warfare. It proves that you don't always need a $6 billion nuclear reactor to win the battle. Sometimes, true supremacy goes to the engineers who are willing to look into the forgotten pages of history, find a quiet, simple machine, and use it to break the rules of the game. If the bizarre David versus Goliath story of the Gotland submarine changed how you view modern warfare, hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that the brilliant, unpolished history of engineering deserves to be heard. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into the archives. What do you think? Should the US Navy start building cheap diesel Stirling submarines? Or is nuclear power still the ultimate advantage? Let us know in the comments below.